Hello, today we will discuss the book Jailbreak by Angela Huebner, chapter 4, and the date is 21st of September 2024. Let's go through the book, the chapter, and raise your hand to start the discussion. I'm gonna get started, and it is the first page on chapter 4. It's about, I find this quite fascinating, that inaction is the norm, she says. We fall into the trap of mistaking familiar for comfortable. Like the familiar, this is how it has always been. We mistake that for comfortable. This feels nice. And she says, we are strangely comforted by familiar, even if familiar is actually quite uncomfortable and leads to nothing. So, the familiar can be beliefs, limiting beliefs, like, uh, like we believe that change is impossible, she says. Or we may believe that we are fated to stay small, sad, angry, and stuck. And that becomes not only familiar, but comfortable as well. This isn't, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts around that? Are you getting comfortable with, with this kind of discomfort? Yeah, Marlene?
Yes, the word that comes to mind is complacency
Yeah.
and inertia. Both inertia and complacency can cause one to be stuck. And the familiar, we adapt to it. That's the trouble, is you can adapt to things that are not good. Kind of like the frog that gets thrown in the hot water, in the boiling water, it'll jump out. But if the water gets gradually increased with the temperature, it'll stay where it's at. And I think that's true for humans. Change requires a lot of initiative and energy and self. It requires self. So if you're blended with your parts, it's going to be hard to leave. Thank you. I'm out.
Thank you. Anne?
It's interesting. It's actually pointing out that parts that are in their normal overreaction, when they haven't been harmonized with self, that actually they're comfortable, it feels comfortable. So I think that's what she's pointing out, that we actually, I mean, it's core to IFS that these parts reactions, we want them at some level, right? Because these parts of us are helping us. They want to be like, they're getting rewarded in some way for this suboptimal behavior. That's so fundamental to how they're working. And then it's interesting that she uses the word comfortable, because we think of them as uncomfortable and yet we just can't help it. But then, of course, it's easier to do the status quo. So it's a nice additional lens, that word of the inertia, as Marlene said, to letting them do their typical role, right? This is easier in some ways.
Yes. Yes, because also there's a positive intention. We're getting something.
Yeah, they were protecting us. Yeah.
They're protecting us. Yeah. And and I'm having a sense that people have tried so many things. They've tried talk therapy, they tried medication, and they're quite fed up. And I have people like that. I have clients, and they will say, nothing works. I don't trust. I've tried all my life. I don't believe IFS or wherever. Nothing works. And yet, I think there's a little small part of themselves that still wants to find a solution. I think Angela Huebner here. She's like blending theories from psychology and IFS. And here, so she says to get out of this stuckness, for example, stuckness or negative beliefs, you need one thing. You need to decide. And that reminds me of life coaching, because in life coaching, decision is key. You need to make the decision.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I have heard of people say, like, I'm just tired. I just need to stop for a while. And I always find it very interesting, like the frame of it being so exhausting, which
Yeah.
it's not my experience of doing inner work. And yet I'm realizing how much there is a sense of sometimes people just need to be, they just need to stop willing and seeking and trying, because that exhaustion and the frustration of not getting the immediate progress they might be looking for, and
Yes.
they need a rest from that, from all the things that come with trying, and the fraught hope, and all that efforting. And so it's kind of balancing those two, right? The need for some downtime.
Yeah, now you bring something else that IFS it is also work. Inner work is not it requires work with yourself.
Yeah.
It's not like always a walk in the park. Trying to help those parts and traumas, even though we externalize them and we give them loads of love, it's still kind of like, get ready to go.
Yeah. It takes energy, it takes focus, it takes having all of those effort. Yeah.
One key question, and I asked that to a client, okay? And I love this question from the book IFS Shame and Guilt. And are you willing? Are you willing to share? Are you willing to talk to me? Are you, asking this question, the willingness question, to a part? Because there might be other parts might be resistant, like maybe they're not in the right place. And here, moving on, and I know I've seen another hand raised. I'm not sure, if if anyone else wants to share about this. And I'll continue. Let me know. She talks about the stages of change, the 5 stages of change, the 5 definable stages between deciding and doing. And she calls them out. She says, first, there's like the pre-contemplation. You're not even aware. Like, you are in your jail with your surrounded by your negative beliefs. You're going nowhere. And you're kind of like trying to get comfortable in that, not aware of anything outside your jail. And then the second stage is called contemplation. There's a maybe there. Something is brewing. And then the third stage, preparation. Fourth stage, action. Action is the fourth stage in deciding. The demolition of our jail cell is beginning, the walls of the jail. Bar by bar, brick by brick, the cell crumbles. Eventually the light shines through. And finally she says maintenance. The final stage is about staying out of jail. And she's going to go through all those steps in the following chapters. So those are the 5 stages. Yes, Anne?
Yeah, I really like how she's really highlighting the need to commitment to change, and that it is uncomfortable, it is difficult. And because there's also at the same time, when we talk to the parts, it's like, oh, they don't have to change, don't worry, you don't have to change. We're just going to listen to them, and really introducing the idea. But at some level, some part of you, like the whole self you, needs to commit to change. You cannot deny it. It's a huge effort toward change.
It is.
This
It's a
process.
commitment. Oh my God. It is. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And sometimes a part of me might get a little bit like, why is this client not committing to their, self-improvement? Because there are five stages, and maybe they're not at that stage yet of taking action. Maybe they're at the pre-contemplation or contemplation stage, and they're not there yet. It is
Yeah,
a
and
journey.
they don't believe it'll work for them. You know, they
Yeah,
haven't had, yeah.
yeah, yeah. They don't believe that we will work for them. How can you make them believe, Anne? How can we make them believe? I don't know. Because it is something personal. They need to go through this journey, this specific journey. Once they are down this journey, it is so freeing, and it is such a somatic, wonderful experience. But they need to try it. And
Oh, sorry, I forgot. I think my hand just never lowered, but
yeah,
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think also it's just the willingness to try. That's like you're not
the
saying I'm
willingness.
guaranteeing. Yeah, it's just are you willing just to try and experiment? And then there's always that thing of can we put it like an experiment and we'll see what doesn't work. And we're iterating and we're learning. We're always going to be learning about yourself, you know, and cultivating a gentle way of learning. So even if it doesn't quote work, you know,
Yes.
there's something to be gained from the experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Marlene.
These stages indicate that it's important not to take action prematurely, because that could be discouraging. You know, a person who's vacillating between, yes, I want to quit, or yes, or no, I don't want to quit right now, that ambivalence um, is in a particular stage, and each stage has its different actions that are required,
Yes.
or its different aspects. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I love what you said, and I'm seeing it slightly different. Because I mean, IFS is all about polarities. A part of me wants to do this, another part doesn't. So I get that, the polarities, but where it can be useful is, this is assessing the preparedness, are you ready are you willing to take action? Is before someone takes on a client, they have kind of a little bit of an exploration. What are your intentions, willingness, what's your intention, what are your expectations? Are you kind of like assessing the readiness for this IFS journey?
And what if you're in a nervous state of collapse or shutdown? Then you have to take like small steps. I think I would emphasize very small changes, very incremental, to not overwhelm
Yes.
the system.
In
Thank
therapy,
you.
yes, in therapy, but before therapy starts, um, yes, I think that maybe a discussion would be essential. And
It makes me think that without explicitly naming it as a part, but that's the part that's, you know, has the attitude toward working and doing the therapy. And so the therapist can just even start, because it's all about cultivating curiosity, right? That's kind of one of the fundamental skills. And you can even just start like, okay, well, that's just, you know, we are practicing curiosity. And at the very least, we can explore how you feel about doing therapy and gain some understanding around that. And
yes,
then have that conversation first.
yes, I think this is an essential conversation, because people have got so many, wow, they've got totally different expectations of, because they're coming from different backgrounds. If you just take life coaching or talk therapy, they're very, you know, give me the answer. They may say like, let me know what should I do, and they expect maybe the therapist to tell them what to do. Um, but it's complex. Yes. It makes me think that the questions before a session, before taking on someone as a client, um, a specific discussion is necessary, and around the willingness as well. What kind of parts are willing to go down this road? Anyway, guys, if it's okay to move on.
Yes.
Yeah. So she talks here about the overview of the whole process, And she breaks it down into action steps for you to follow, she says. We activate our wise heart. We get into that ventral vagal energy flow of openness and connection. And from this place, we get to know the guards. So I kind of like that she uses polyvagal language, the ventral vagal energy flow. And so first we activate our wise heart. And I do have questions around that because, I also do hypnosis. And with hypnosis, we do have inductions where they take you deep into this calm, self-led state. And she kind of recommends mindfulness practices to help you connect with your wise heart, to go into this kind of ventral vagal state. So we will see later on how she does that. I'm curious, and I would like us to discuss this a little bit more, maybe later on. I don't know, but let's move on. I'll move on to the next page. Okay. So first we go into the ventral vagal energy, and get to know the guards. Then we get to know, we meet the prisoners, and the witnessing begins the healing. Then we kind of help and exonerate the prisoners, and check in with the guards to see if they witness this transformation. Okay. So we hope like the guards eventually will change out of their uniform into something more comfortable. I like that. They will change into a different role. This is kind of an overview of the IFS process. And then she moves on to some actions. Action 1, she says, recognizing what is. What is the pattern in your life that is no longer serving you? That's the first action. And I kind of really like that, because she says, identify your limiting beliefs. And she's got the patterns of negative beliefs. She's got like she grouped them. A group of negative beliefs around inadequacy, responsibility, accountabilities, safety/vulnerability, control/choice. And I guess we all kind of experience some of those negative beliefs. But she says it's very important to identify what the key negative beliefs. And she's trying to help us by grouping them into different, under different labels. I see. So once you have a sense of the negative beliefs you hold, think about what you tend to do when that negative belief is active. In other words, what prison guards spring into action? And here's my question. And she says here, your guards. What guards surround your invisible prison? Let's really get to know them. Enter through your wise heart. To this end, we employ our open curiosity, primed by the 4x4x6 breathing, and our focused attention, primed by the senses exercises to get started. It helps to imagine your guards as people. I have so many questions around those things. And she will speak about those kind of like mindfulness exercises again later on. In the previous chapter, chapter 3, she explained a lot about the science and why it is important, you know, to have, she has a regular schedule of doing those meditation exercises. She does a breathing exercise and a gratitude exercise every single morning, like the author does, Angela Huebner does. But I'm trying to understand, because this is so different to IFS. And I used to do something similar with hypnotherapy, okay? And what I did is priming someone, anchoring someone into their like calm state, and bring that state into a challenging situation. Through hypnosis, I anchored, like, you know, whatever it is, really a deep, amazing, relaxed, confident state. Somebody was getting angry in a situation, and I bring that, you know, that energy into that self energy into the challenging situation. And that kind of like, in my experience, if it's a kind of like easily identifiable situation, like someone triggers this person, it's no longer triggering, because the self energy moves into that situation, and the kind of the angry part or the trigger part is kind of moving. It's not there anymore. It doesn't care. Let's self take handle it. I'm not gonna say it works every time, because there's no unburdening. Now she talks here a little bit different. What she says is prime yourself with meditation techniques or hypnosis techniques or mindfulness techniques. You can call them what you like. They're all kind of like, you know, they cover the same ground, a lot of them. I've never heard Dick Schwartz say, you know, use your, even though he does, okay, you know, take a few deep breaths, okay, but I've not explicitly, I've not heard that explicitly. Use your like 4x4x6 breathing and your focused attention to get to know your protectors. It's kind of like, yes, it confuses me. Yes, Anne?
I find that really interesting. And I think it depends on the person and the contact they have with their parts, because I know a lot of people seem to have problems accessing their parts. And it could be if you're too calm and in too much of a warm, loving state, you actually can't access your issues. And you're like, it's fine. It's actually then maybe too much of the calm part comes. It's not just self, but it's actually the part that enjoys feeling calm. And so in those cases, it might not be as helpful. And on the other hand, someone who comes in with a lot of anxiety and that the anxiety is getting in the way, then this would very much help. So the question is, what's getting in the way of accessing the parts that we need to talk to, maybe is the question. And if someone's anxious and feeling unsafe, this will be very helpful. But if someone feels like either they're neutral and or they are distant from their parts, they can't access it, then it's not clear that this would always help. I mean, it still could maybe for someone who's distant from their parts, but I do know a lot of friends who say that they just can't feel it. They can't get to remember that moment, you know, usually guys, no
Yes.
offense,
Oh, yeah.
but yeah. But yeah, so those are my thoughts. So yeah, I don't.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Christina?
Well, I think when Dick Schwartz talks about the self as the main energy that has the healing power within the human psyche, from what I understand, I think he does mean that there is an inherited, embedded energy within each and every psyche that has the potential to heal itself. And it does require making the decision. I mean, if someone wants a therapy, if someone decides he wants to experience a state of equilibrium within himself, hence seeking therapy. This does mean making the decision to, or having the attitude and the belief that there is deep inherited power within him or her that we or he or she should, or it's preferable to let in and depend on. So it's really a matter of belief and making a decision that the self is capable of healing. And you just think of a technique to ground. She came out with that technique of grounding, which is the breathing. I'm sure there are other techniques. As far as for me, it's basically sitting in my garden and looking around, looking at the flowers and meditating the beauty. This act in and of itself just made me think that there should be, I mean, there is something good in this world. People are good. The human psyche is good.
Mm-hmm.
And all you need to do is basically reclaim that goodness back to you and heal. I hope it makes sense what I said.
Yes. I'm still not clear because I like the concept of self. Self has everything. Self feels no pain at all. Self is loving. Self is curious. It's wow. It's like this is kind of like spiritual sense. We all exist within all of us. Then if we think that, then why do we need the 4x4x6 breathing? Why do we need that? And why do we need focused attention to help us get started so we can enter our wise heart and get to know our guards? Christina, are you complete, Christina? Yeah, I don't know. Anne?
Yeah, in the meditation traditions, that's their thoughts, right? Like we access the wise heart, and they might not be encompassing all of the emotional, psychological issues in their framework. However, the idea is you access the wise heart when you have focused attention and when you are able to, access love and kindness. And when they do neuroimaging scans, when you're doing a more absorbed meditations, the, more egocentric or concerned parts of the neural networks are quiet, so you do access a brain state, in terms of their imaging, that quiets certain things that can be otherwise, when they're active, can be leading to like mind wandering and rumination.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it is a way, to
Yes, I love what you said, and I get it. I understand. Like the senses experience. Notice and name what's around you, the sounds, the wherever you see, colors, objects. That brings you into the present moment, and she explains that very well why that happens in chapter 3. And as you said, okay, science supports that. When we do those exercises, we go into this kind of like our brain waves change, everything changes. I guess so. If we have a practice of entering self through those practices every day, regularly, it might be easier for us to bring that to the forth and connect with our protectors, with the parts.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a question, like my question was like, because I was looking into these practices from the meditation perspective, I was like, but then to what degree do they actually fix their psychological or heal their psychological issues? And it's kind of like, no one knows, and it's kind of like there's so many different ways, and what everyone's doing during their private meditation in their head is also subtly different. So it's hard, and of course everyone's issues and how they're represented are different. But I guess the general thing is like, it kind of scaffolds on each other. Like if you can just do these practices, let's say you only just do love and kindness meditation or well-being meditation, and I think it has its own healing effects because you are accessing self energy, you know, and because that strength of self energy is coming out, and naturally the system will have more self infused with it. And at the same time, especially if there are more pernicious parts, you know, deeply entrenched with bigger, you know, responses and, you know, more entrenched in their roles, then definitely there's nothing, you cannot just, you know, for most people, you can't just like meditate that away. You definitely have to do separately, you have to do psychological work. And there are stories of like people like meditation, maybe meditation teachers showing that they've had this like awakening experiences, big, you know, life-changing experiences, and yet they had psychological things that they did have to deal with through psychological processes because it was
Yes.
a different track, it's a different context, it's a different mode of responding to the world that doesn't just get fixed because you're able to access wise heart on its own.
Yeah. Well, yes, I've heard the kind of horror stories, and I've heard the excellent stories in books and research papers. Like, you know, it's mindfulness meditation is like, wow, the cure for all. Okay, and then I heard some real stories that is like, you know, personal stories where somebody, for example, with addiction, and that they were trying to do this kind of mindfulness and 12-step and whatever, and they got too much. It felt like avoidance, not like what is called spiritual
Absolutely.
bypass.
Totally. It totally depends on how you're approaching it and what kind of teachings you're following and how open they are and how encouraging of allowing emotions and exploring emotions they are. And they differ so much. There is definitely a lot of mindfulness teaching that's very repression, that can very much encourage repression, which is very dangerous. So
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
I think the tide is turning, though. I think it's
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Marlene?
Yes, I'm looking at where it says that going into the wise heart, to employ our open curiosity, we have to prime by breathing. So we're priming the pump. It's almost like the preparation stage of change where you have to get into ventral vagal in order to meet the guards. Because if I'm not coming from self, meeting the guards, I may become blended with them. They may take over and there's no longer separation. So it's really a way to engage the parasympathetic nervous system. I like that.
Yeah.
The polyvagal keeps coming in.
Yeah.
We have to prime the pump to get out of sympathetic or dorsal, dorsal shutdown. So we have to be in that prime space. And yeah, I like that. Thank you.
I love it. I love that. Yeah, thank you. Okay, with hypnosis, we can take someone so deep in like in a magical place of such deep, profound relaxation. Yeah, and you know, people often do not feel any kind of pain, not physical, not emotional, nothing. Of course, because self doesn't have any pain, doesn't feel pain. And I am wondering, yeah, whether maybe a regular practice of someone doing some of those kind of exercises at home, then it gets them more um, familiar with those type of practices and entering self already. You know, like with clients, I may ask, okay, what do you do that brings out this kind of self energy? You know, what kind of hobbies do you have? Because it is important, you know, what kind of social circle you have. It is important the clients get to experience self energy as much as they can, or people generally. It helps balance their system and cope better with parts. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very much the whole resilience building aspect, right? And then we've discussed how sometimes it can be a little bit overlooked in IFS, and yet it's so important to help do the work on the other part, as well as just for facing life, right? There you face life both by healing the difficulties, but building, you know, resilience and resource for approaching things in general, even without having trauma-related issues.
Yeah. Yes. it's okay. I need to like return back to this. To get to know your guards, she recommends that you do those kind of practices that help you connect with your wise heart. And how would you imagine, guys? I wonder, how would you imagine doing those practices? Just in session? Or would you imagine that like as a kind of a regular practice, like she has one? And and I do have a question about what is about the well-being meditation. What does that mean? Yes, Anne?
I answered two of them. So I guess I think in session, I know friends who go to a somatic therapist and they are doing the whole absorbing of the positive experience. So when they've done something, let's say they took initiative in a way that was overcoming an issue they felt they had or a limiting self-belief, to really ground that experience. And kind of related, Rick Hansen has this HEAL model, which is also, positive psychology. It's have the experience. I forget what E is, but something about enhance it. Oh, just make it bigger, describe it, really get to know it, like savor all the details of emotional feelings, textures, thoughts, and then absorb it. So really imagine it like infusing your being and becoming part of you. And then a link, and the optional is the L, which is to link it to a negative experience. So it's to overcome our negativity bias. And I think, it's really like asking each individual person, when have they felt these qualities, and hopefully they can think of something, and really whether it's them in the garden, reading, talking to a friend, or a particular moment when they saw this bird in the sky, whatever it was for them, and then really having them reflect on how it felt in their body and what it's like for them. And it's very related. So what well-being meditation, so in the West, we primarily, I have only recently discovered this, which I think I mentioned in the other group. There is insight meditation, where it's like, oh, you just let things go, you just watch things come up and you let them go. And that's what I've always just heard of. And to me, it's fine, but it wasn't super inspiring. But the other huge strand of meditation is samadhi, which is absorption. And it's they call it concentration, but it's really harmony of mind. And you're more actively responding to the moment. You're actually actively trying to get to know what inside you has a sense of pleasure that's not conditional on outer situation. So it's the idea of, can you just, from your own internal sense of paying attention and relating to your internal feelings or senses, feel this like wonderful levels of well-being. And then like in the jhanas, they have like 8 levels of ultra consciousness, of like extreme joy, and then like extreme contentment, and extreme like peaceful, blissful, and all these. And so I haven't reached any of this, but like the actual practice is super interesting. And the breathing from the heart meditation that you've introduced, there's a lot of things like that for the teacher that I've been following, very related. And for me, it's made so much difference compared to other types of more just like notice thoughts types of meditation.
Yes.
So you're actually actively cultivating and kind of bringing out those little subtle things in you that do feel good. That's the practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And is there a book you want to suggest, recommend?
The teacher, sadly, he's dead. His name is Rob Burbea, and he has loads of recorded retreats online and talks.
How do you spell his surname?
It's Burbea. Yeah, and so one of the 3 retreats that he gave right before he died was the jhana retreat, which also encompasses so much of his teachings, and he approaches it in such an open way. So it's also, and he innovated on traditional Buddhist teachings with imaginal practices, which is very related to IFS. And I was so curious if he did know about IFS, because it's all about integrating like images and working with them and trying to understand your relationship to them, and using that to help you see in a more freeing way. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
I'll send you the link in
the. Oh, brilliant. Yes, please. That would be great for everyone else. And
I can put it in this chat.
Yeah, that'll be brilliant. Yes. So well-being meditation is about focusing on the wonderful things and wonderful states, and making them kind of bigger. That's what I'm getting a little bit.
Yeah. It's the sense that this doesn't have to come from things happening in the outside world. You actually can cultivate these feelings simply from inside you, which is so kind of consistent with self-energy in the way that this sense of joy and abundance and beauty.
With IFS self, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to make it. You don't have to manufacture it in a way because it's there.
Yeah, and that's the philosophy, because they're like, once you get rid of the hindrances, like you're not feeling aversion, you're not feeling clinging, whatever, the list, when you work with like letting those go, letting those fall away, which is almost like very analogous of parts that it's not psychological. You can be, different practices you can be, but then the idea is these will just arise, these states of well-being. Yeah.
Well, I do something similar with hypnosis and NLP. So when I go to an exile, I used to anyway, definitely before the IFS, and sometimes I use it with IFS. So if there is a traumatic event and during the redo, and if it's a positive redo, we explode kind of this kind of like with the feelings, making them bigger, the colors bigger, the picture bigger.
Yes.
Does it make sense a little bit?
Yeah, very much. Exactly. And so that's kind of introducing so what I love about this teacher is he's very much using the positive construction of what's useful, which I think a lot of meditation teachers, which is perhaps what you were noticing, because they just want to deconstruct everything, it's all like empty, i.e. could even seem kind of meaningless. And they emphasize that part of it, but they don't emphasize the freedom to reconstruct in a way that's useful. And IFS has that, that's re-envision, and there's the psychology, we have this reparenting or the ideal parent and bringing in those figures. And that is also can be linked with more meditative states and using that in meditations.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So in a typical IFS therapy, here's like I'm gonna stay here for one more moment. In a typical IFS session, is there any use bringing in the kind of like those exercises? Or would it be more applicable to give, if the client is willing, to give them some homework? If they can have like a tailor a kind of practice that's suitable to them, okay? Some kind of breathing or the focusing kind of exercise to practice their superpower of focusing and the self-energy, delving into this self-energy. Yes, Anne?
So I think that there's a lot of benefit to do it in session. So like doing these samadhi meditations or jhana meditations, there's so much detail of like, what do you do when this happens? Or when this feeling, what do you pay attention to? Do you cling to this? Do you get that? And there's just so much variation in someone's internal experience. And to have, if I could have a guide or just even hearing teachings on a lot of different ways of this could happen and then try to do this instead, this could happen. It's not so simple, it's quite like complicated practice at some level, not to make it complicated, but just so many ways things can happen that get in the way of, and everyone's so personal and how it goes for them. Like in terms of, I guess, jhanas, like people feel very differently on the inside. Their systems are wired so differently. So how they access it also feels very different. So because there's so much difference in possibility, then I think having someone with you to guide, especially even, maybe even, but you could give the activity and then also ask them to check in and then make notes, right? So I think apparently, like, I haven't had this happen myself, but if you have a meditation teacher, you'll tell them like 30 seconds in, I started the sensation here started happening and I felt tight here, and then this started coming in. So it's very detailed relating of what's going on, and the teacher will respond to everyone's individual internal path,
With IFS, that would be a part, that would be a feature, a characteristic, or whatever, a quality of the part.
Yes.
Now, so if in IFS, typically maybe I will ask someone to take some deep breaths or something short, maybe a body scan, maybe a safe place, but typically something short, like say, like a few deep breaths. And then we'll move into the how the person relates to the parts.
Yeah, so I guess the question is the parts could come up inside the exercise, and whether you're going to name it as a part or not, starting just to pay attention to the details of what's happening during this warm-up activity can be a way to lead it.
Warm up, like you say, like during the meditation, there's a bit of meditation and check to see what comes up.
Yeah, at the
All the
same
nuances.
time, it's like you're ramping up to noticing and becoming more detailed, right? Because like as we said before, it takes time to transition to, and takes time for the awareness for things to come up. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the positive stuff, okay. IFS has got like something, and I think maybe it's not emphasized enough, but I still like it. So you have, for example, an anxious part, or a part with addiction to, you know, some kind of an addiction to drugs or something, and then you ask that part, okay, do you like what you're doing? And typically they'll say, you know, I don't really like to be anxious. What would you like to do instead? And say, I'd like to be more relaxed. And then IFS is like, there is your opportunity, like as a therapist, maybe, to really go deep. What does that mean? How does that make you feel to be relaxed? What is that role? What does that role look like? How does this part, relaxed part, this hypothetical relaxed part, relate to other parts or your external world, and you know, your inner parts or everything? So there is an opportunity there for something hugely positive.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the inner champions, right? They talk about the transform inner champions.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely.
The inner champions. Then I wonder if this part, or you know, an anxious part, would like an ally. An inner champion could be an ally, because
Yeah. And sometimes it's their different role, and sometimes it's an ally, I guess.
yes. But you know, like right at the start, though, would you think that it is essential to use some kind of breathing or focusing exercise? You know, focusing, like, you know, an exercise that brings you into the present moment, which is like noticing and naming.
I think it depends on the person, because sometimes people are the process of IFS and asking you to notice what's going on, notice what part's present already is a focusing exercise.
Yeah,
of
that is a
itself.
focusing exercise. Yeah.
So the question is, does a separate one with some priming for warmth and just the open?
Okay. Yes. Noticing your system and naming whatever comes up in your system, that is a presence exercise.
Already, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Wow, it's complex, but it's easy and complex.
I think it also depends on how readily people go to a part, right? So like
Typically, you know, not always. Some people can come, you know, from my experience, some clients can have like a few parts. Often, many times, the first few times they have a session, second time they have a session, then there's a deluge of parts.
yeah.
It's like 20 parts that can come up.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you know, Dick Swartz talks about those little kids, in, you know, they found a teacher, they want to say, I'm here.
Yeah. Yes.
And you know, knowing that it is important to have, you know, self to part relationship, and knowing that sometimes the client is impatient, they want results, a part of them, I want to say, you know. And sometimes my part wants results, quick results.
Yeah.
Trying to get those parts to kind of be patient. Whew.
Yeah, it's kind of the art form, right? It's like when you just think like, oh, right now I think a little bit of, sorry, I just fell off. A little bit of this would add to the richness of bringing out all the Yeah.
Yeah, well, the kind of ideal. I have a part that says the ideal scenario is one part shows up, self embraces and connects with it,
Yeah.
creates this kind of like a safe attachment, inner safe attachment. Okay, they don't need any external attachments,
Yes.
and at
Yes.
the end of the session, they unburden and they feel so free and relief and everything.
Like, I mentioned a skit of like the ideal IFS session, and then
The
like
ideal.
life version.
A part says that, okay, and
Yeah.
then on the other side, it's all about slowing down.
Yeah. 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 And like 6 months later, it's like one part was discovered, or, finally rehabilitated, or like
Yeah.
less angry. Yeah.
Yeah, because it can take 6 months, it can take a month, it can take one session. Who knows?
Yeah.
Every system is different. I did read a little bit this book, Radical Acceptance. Oh my God, I loved what she said. She said, she mentioned the metaphor. She said, when you look inside and try to find your parts, and often a lot of people, they want to kind of ignore their feelings and their body, so they're not in touch with, and especially men, as we said, be a man, don't cry, kind of thing. Okay, so they disconnect from the body, and when you try to go in and do this U-turn and look inside, it's dark, and your eyes are not adjusted to the dark, they can't see very
That's a
well.
lovely metaphor, not adjusted to the dark. Yeah.
Yes, and it takes it a while to see a bit more and a bit more. And sometimes like, wow, after a while, you can really see loads of things in the dark. You know?
Yeah, beautiful metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you, guys. Ooh, I will move on to the next page. I love what she says here. The goal is to learn to distinguish the different guards, the different protectors, the different parts, and their jobs, like their responses. It's a bit like being able to tell who is walking up the stairs just by the sound. Do you hear the heavy footsteps of your father or the quick patter of your little brother? If you slow down long enough to pay attention on purpose, you will notice that the guards are qualitatively different. And then she mentions about, how do you get to know them? Imagine you're taking them out for coffee or a beer, your choice really. She says, the point is to hang out with them long enough to learn what makes them tick. You cannot meet them with any hidden agenda. They are experts at sensing ulterior motives and will refuse to open up. And she says, I encourage my clients to journal about what they learn, to describe the guards like characters in a story. Some sketch pictures of their guards. They may look like cartoon figures, shapes, or just colors. One client let her guard write postcards to her. Dear Emily, you suck. You're not smart enough. No one will ever want you. Signed, your critic. Addressed to Emily at Future Unknown, The Dumps, USA. I love the kind of like optional homework, journaling, sketching you, and it's so important to know each part, to be able to recognize it straight away, and to know what it says, what's their belief, what they say. Okay. At some point she did say about here, it helps to imagine your guards as people, and then she does give an example of her own system, but she 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 doesn't mention any of her parts as people. She only mentions them as kind of like sensations. And I kind of like, I understand that the more you get to know your system and your parts, the it's more likely the parts, they may show up as objects or colors or just feelings, but with time they will become more anthropomorphic. They'll become more like little people the more they trust you. As they become like people, this kind of enables this kind of connection between self and part. It feels like a better connection. But again, I don't know, each one is different. Here's like her example of her guards. The warrior, uh, she calls it 11 because 11 shows up between her eyebrows. It looks like the number 11, two lines that form deep ruts in her on her forehead. And then she's got the shutdowner. Believes that if 11 is allowed to say what he's really thinking, there will be conflict. And 11 looks like it's a male. So even though she doesn't describe it as a human or as an image of that sort, as a person, she has a sense that this part is male. Okay. So let's see. I'll go back to see action 1 so we can, oh, no. So okay, we move on to action 2. Action 1 is about having a sense of what is. We need to understand how it came to be. To do this, we have to continue attuning to the guards. They need to feel seen, understood, and appreciated before they even will consider letting us approach the prisoners they've spent their career hiding away. Attunement takes time. Relationship building with your inner parts requires attunement, and attunement takes time. Oh, here. Uh, so before you attempt to connect to the guards, check in with yourself. Are you coming from your wise heart, self-energy? In other words, are you genuinely calm, curious, and compassionate? Use the practices introduced in Chapter 3, breathing, sensing in present time, orienting, scuba diving, and heart coherence as needed. This is what she says then. She says before you try to create a relationship with your parts, first do a quick check-in. What, are you in your heart? I think that would. And again, I get what I think, Anne, you said that. Um, Sometimes when we are in our heart, we might forget what the issue is.
Yeah.
I do, because I still think that, being in your heart is essential. Okay, of course. Okay. And blending with this anxious, depressed, or whatever that intense emotion is, having some blending so you can get a sense of it, so you can connect with it. That is also essential. Letting it blend for a little bit and then asking it to move away and soften back and don't go too far, come close. And, I think IFS and the beauty of IFS is being able to sit with very intense emotions, really intense, uncomfortable emotions with your like wise kind of open heart, which is like, I don't think anyone, I'm not entirely sure, like, talk therapy and other types of therapy, I think they try to take you away from it, away from those intentions, like, suicidal thoughts, for example. Okay, other forms of therapy, they try to, how can I fix it? But IFS is not looking for fix it. It's looking for bring it on, okay? Whatever it is, extreme, horrible emotions, let's slow it down. Let's sit with it. Let's really see it, understand it, get it. Don't run away. Come here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think IFS, I don't, there are whole sets of therapies that are compassion focused therapies. And then I guess we were thinking of reading the focusing book as well. So I think there are definitely therapies that also have the same spirit. And I think IFS is most like direct about it, maybe perhaps, right? It's like
Direct.
learn to love them. We learn to develop that deep relationship with these parts that we naturally don't like.
Yeah, the focus book, I spoke to before. I spoke about the radical acceptance, and it is a focusing book. But I don't know. I've never seen the concept of self more clearly described. I've not seen it anywhere else other than IFS.
Yeah. I have to think. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I'm just trying to think of
Not just the concept of self, but self to part relationship. Here's, you have this self that cannot be destroyed. This is super, like,
yeah,
part.
I agree. I think that's very special about IFS. Yeah.
Yes, and nothing. There's no fear there. It can be with anything.
Yeah, it's such a kind of link so much to spiritual beliefs. Not that you have to believe anything in particular, but just that belief in that there is a strong center that has all these,
Yeah.
wonderful characters.
Yes, and I think
God
for
within.
me personally, I think it goes beyond belief. It's like it's wow. I totally other this, like, I get it.
Yeah, there's something about just it resonates so much, right? With
Yeah.
the feeling of this is what is life being worth. The most worthwhile thing in life is to have access to this way of
Yes.
being.
Yeah, the spiritual sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is no wonder why there's such a huge movement around IFS.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
They're doing more things now. They're having like a charity, and they try to spread it worldwide with like this kind of. There's already research, but they're doing more research and everything. Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, let's move on. It's about getting to know your protectors, or she calls them guards. Okay. And once you get to know it, you ask about the memory that comes up or attached to the guard's beliefs. Okay. And action 3, witnessing and updating. When the guards feel like you understand and appreciate how hard they have worked on your behalf, they will let you see the prisoner. And there very well may be more than one prisoner. And with the guard's permission, you can enter the inmate's cell. Are you feeling openness and any warmth for this inmate? Are you interested in its story? And listening with an open heart is a tall order. But if you have been practicing the exercises again in chapter 3, I have every confidence you can do this. Keep practicing. I'm going to highlight this. So to her, she really recommends that we practice those exercises, the mindfulness, the meditation exercises, have a regular practice. So you can easily, it's like a bookmark, you can easily activate those states of self-led state, this kind of the self energy. Because it's like, if you do it every day, it would definitely be easier to access that. Yeah, moving on, okay. When when you go when you enter the cell and you find the exile, she calls the exile the prisoner. You find the trauma, the part that suffered the trauma. Be patient. Prisoners are not used to visitors. It may be weary, it may be angry, it may ignore you. As shame researcher Brené Brown says, not everyone has earned the right to hear your story. I remind my clients that witnessing a prisoner is a lot like interacting with a hurt child or a frustrated partner. Going into lecture fix-it mode with either is not helpful. So come alongside the child or partner in attunement. It's only when others feel seen and truly understood that they are open to input from you. And when we are outside our window of tolerance, the thinking part of our brain is unavailable. In other words, in those moments, your child or partner cannot hear the brilliant advice you're giving, even if they want to. Same goes for the prisoner. Wait, listen to understand rather than to fix. This will take as long as it takes. Go slow. Prisoners usually have not experienced the kind of attunement that would help them make adaptive sense of their experiences. That's precisely what landed them in jail. Lack of attunement, relationships. But not having a safe attachment or relationships going wrong, and then the prisoners take on those kind of limiting beliefs. It's my fault, or I'm unworthy, or all sorts of beliefs that do not help. Okay, and guys, I'm aware a little bit of the time, and I'll speed through it a little bit. And do let me know if you have any thoughts. Yeah, Marlene.
Who is the exile underneath the people pleaser? Is it a fearful part, fearful of rejection? It must be a really young part. I'm
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
flummoxed as what exile the people pleaser protects.
Yes. And what sense do you get when you think like, what? The question is like, what the people pleaser is afraid of.
Abandonment.
So that's the one.
Yeah, that comes up for me.
That's the one. This exile must have had some kind of experience of abandonment.
Or the threat of it. If you
And the
do
threat
this,
of it.
you won't be able
Yeah.
to come over again or visit.
He kind of knows what it feels like. And maybe like, here there's an example with Alan. And Alan, uh, um, he had his exile was hungry for connection. And my God, he went through a lot of trauma. His mother suffered from depression, didn't connect with anyone. Um, and the little one is telling Alan, yeah, what went through. Uh, he's, he's, he was abused by his father. His father hated him. His brothers, uh, so his brothers were in their own world. They couldn't be there for him. So he actually, he's talking about he wants to be witnessed. and he's talking to the self, this exile, and says, look, this kind of thing, like not being connected, it happened there and there and there at school, with my mom, with my dad, with my brothers. Can you please sense, see, get my pain? So there's could be one thing, could be abandonment, and there could be a lot of story behind it. Potentially, okay? I don't know your system, but I'm just guessing, because also you could have different exiles. You could have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different, or it might show up as one and tell you its story. That, I don't know, Marlene, does it make any sense at all?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Guys, here the science it talks about, and it she talks here. The author talks about Bruce Ecker's reconsolidation theory. For reconsolidation describes a specific process through which synapses associated with particular memories and their accompanying thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and behaviors can be unlocked and updated with new information. For this update to occur, the implicit memory and the associated beliefs from that memory must first be reactivated. Yeah, and it happens when we focus on the prisoner. Focus as our superpower. Um, it is our super. The focus. She says in chapter 3, focus is our superpower and helps neurons fire together and then wire together. And emotions are actually a key component to memory formation. Those experiences that evoke strong emotion grab our attention and are coded quickly. And the second step of this reconsolidation process occurs with the update. And here's a summary. So emotion opens the memory, contradictory information is introduced, and the memory is updated. Because the memory itself is altered, the associated strategies, i.e. the guards that developed around the memory, are no longer triggered. And thus the strategies are not needed. When this happens, they are free to assume a role in the system that is helpful today. So Bruce Ecker is well known in this kind of circle of IFS and his theory on reconsolidation. And Frank Anderson also spoke about him in his book, the IFS manual, I believe it is. So it is very important to attune to our own internal world, helping our parts to have secure attachment to our wise heart or self. When we feel this internal secure attachment, it, like external social support, allows our nervous system to shift into the ventral vagal portion of the parasympathetic response. Okay. And okay, when we do this kind of updating and work, it's really, I mean, I find this really important. When this process is complete, the IFS kind of process of updating and relief and everything, it doesn't mean we will never be triggered again. Rather, it means we have more conscious awareness of our internal experience. This awareness allows us to choose our response rather than simply reacting as usual. So, and then she gives an example. So you do get this kind of like not immediately jump into it with this kind of emotion triggered or activated, but you do get a little bit of space and you can choose. You can do the same or something different. That's what she says anyway. I have noticed with phobias, it's like the emotion is gone. There's no phobia. Uh, Often with simple phobias and simple fears, they are totally gone. Sometimes, often, like in one session. So, I mean, who would choose a phobia? I don't know, unless it's, I don't know.
How does a phobia disappear in one session?
It's my experience in like a simple phobia. Okay, not we're not talking about childhood trauma, and abuse and complex PTSD. So it disappears by sitting with the fear and asking the fear to like show up the memories associated with it. How was it created? And often the fear, if you sit with it and be patient with it, the fear will show you memories. And I've had this experience with clients, guys. The client is like 44 years old. She doesn't remember what happened in her childhood, but when she sits with that emotion, boom, whoosh, whoosh, kind of whoosh. she, there's a. I was 2 years old. I was 5 years old, and this happened. And there's a whole story. Sometimes it's only somatic if it's a baby. But with the phobias and fears, normally it's not like a baby, like non-verbal, no? Yes, Christina?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I know you can you can get healed of it from one session, which lasts for 1 hour. That's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it is. In my experience, yes. Not for everyone. Sometimes, but a lot of people, if they have a simple phobia, like, falling from heights or um, spiders or different types of phobias. But they're simple, as I said, not complex. Like, I mean, like complex, they're not developmental. There's no developmental trauma involving abuse and kind of like not being attached to parents. And that takes a long time, unfortunately. The complex PTSD, that takes a long time. There's no trust in the system. The system feels like it is ready to defend itself.
And how about emotional neglect, the trauma of emotional
Yeah,
neglect
it
from
is.
your own experience? How long does it take to, I mean, an average?
It's hard. This one is like as I'm hearing that, and no one can say what, it's an individual thing. But I have a sense that emotional neglect, childhood emotional neglect, it's a long-term thing.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
Because it's deeply embedded in it's coded into the DNA.
Yes. The funny thing is that, we grow up and whatever happened in our childhood, a lot of the stuff become implicit memories, or maybe we block them and we don't want to remember them, okay? Because it's too painful. And it's like, no, I don't remember anything from my childhood. I have no memory. But when you sit with it slowly, images, something, something somatic, something like an image like will show up.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not verbal, because a lot of people have, adopted people, orphaned people. They often have a lot of somatic experiences, not so many, and it takes patience to get there. And a pre-verbal baby or a baby, kind of like a fetus in the mother's tummy, and not feeling attached to the mother.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, but that can be, there's help, but it needs patience to get there.
Yes,
yeah.
patience.
If someone's system is very traumatized, it takes time. Okay, and I think we are complete. Is anything else? If not, I will see you all for, next time, chapter 5, staying out of jail, chapter 5. And thank you very much, guys, for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vana.
Thank you. I'm trying to stop recording. Stop.